All right, I think, is it showing that we're recording here? Yep, there we go. So Cindy, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Wanted to provide the College of Ed leadership team an opportunity to learn a little bit more about some of the capabilities that we have at the university level as we're beginning to think about some innovative program ideas and development, ranging from even certificate programs and badges, et cetera, to degree programs. Okay, so if you don't mind, Cindy, if you'll tell us a little bit about your role at the university, I think it'll help us sort of frame what we can lean on you for when those times come.
Great. Well, hi, everybody. I have sort of two hats at the university, right? One is academic program planning, and that's to facilitate the program planning process at the university level and at the system office level. And the second hat is the accreditation hat. And so I handle our large accreditation pushes like reaffirmation, fifth year reporting, those kinds of things. But I also handle looking at programmatic changes to make sure that we're notifying our accreditor of changes that require notification and seeking approval for changes that need to be approved before implemented. And so program planning and accreditation go hand in hand in that aspect. We have a constant sort of assessment of what needs to be given to them ahead of time and what we can just send to them as a notification and what we don't even have to tell them at all. When it comes to program planning, it's twofold, right? So I help shepherd people through the process once they know what they want to do in my department. And so we have people that will help you plan and people that will help you navigate through curriculum for either new programming or programmatic revisions. But what we can also do is help you look at market data when you have questions about whether or not you want to explore a particular program as a new program or as a revision to a program to help maybe gain enrollment in a particular area.
Yeah, so that last part is really exciting, and what we really want to dial in on is so I was really, and I know that you presented this to some of the COE leadership already, but what we wanted to get a sense of was what this MZ data, this market data that we're able to pull and you're able to help us take a look at, what it really shows us, you know, how it informs the work that we have. Do you mind sharing some ideas about what MZ might show us and how we might use it?
So MZ can be used in two ways. MZ can be used as an exploratory tool where you're looking at the market itself and then trying to figure out where there might be room for growth that we can add a program or revise a program to meet. Or if you already have a program area in mind, we can explore the viability of that program in the marketplace.
Okay. Would you mind showing us a little bit about what MZ can do? Maybe do a screen share and show us what we're able to capture. Remembering, you know, in our case, we're in a college of education, but knowing that there might be other areas that we might be able to explore. We'd love to have you show that real quick, if you don't mind.
Okay. So you should be able to see my MZ program screen now.
I can.
And so MZ Analyst is a program we have access to through the system office contracts. We have the ability to purchase a seat, and it allows us to go in and look at different types of data. And so if you already have a program that you are interested in, you can do a program development and review analysis. And so what this does is it shows you your competitive landscape, so what other institutions have programs in that area, and they will allow you to see both distance education and on-campus programs and sort of tease out the differences between the two. It'll show you labor market demands, so what the job market looks like in a particular area that you will define, right? We can look as high as the United States, we can go down as low as county to look at that kind of data. It will also give you relevant skills that particular job area requires, and the relevant skills of the people holding jobs in those areas. And that's really nice. And it'll give you a demographic breakdown of the people holding jobs in that particular area.
So Cindy,
let's look at one.
Yeah. So I was going to ask you a question. I didn't mean that. I just wanted to jump in real quick because that second part. So this tool is not only used for us to help identify sort of gaps within programs, within our region, et cetera, so that we can create new programs. But that relevant skills, maybe how do we need to revise our programs to meet the needs of students in our existing programs? Is that what you're saying?
Exactly, because
Okay.
it will give you a breakdown of both technical and more, I hate to use the word soft skills, but those skills like communication, those kinds of things that will allow you to see what the job postings are asking for and
Okay.
what people coming out into the industry hold. And if you can identify an area where there's a large ask and that there's not a lot of competency in, that's a way to engage in some program planning to help revise or add to a program in order to meet those needs.
Thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
So no problem. So I'm just gonna show you a quick and dirty one. We're gonna pick our school, which is us. All right, and then Alan, give me a zip code in education.
Can I do it by name or do I have to do that by the actual number?
We can do keyword or skill too. So
Yeah. So let's do it. Let's do adult education.
All right. So we can look at target occupations or we can look at program areas. So this one didn't come up with a whole lot. It's come up with a whole lot of stuff, and so maybe that's not the way we want to go. But say we were interested in looking at adult basic education and English as a second language instructors.
Yeah,
right?
let's do that. Yep.
Okay. All right, so related programs. You can pick a related program.
So let's see. Let's go into project management. That was interesting. Let's just see. That might be a different. Thought I saw one there.
All right. So then we're going to define our landscape, right? Are we looking at an undergraduate program? Are we looking at a graduate program? And we can filter out some of the noise. We don't want to look at less than 2-year schools because we're a 4-year institution. And we can just look at a public and private 4-year institutions.
Okay, sounds good.
We can let's look at a bachelor's degree. We could tailor this to any level we wanted.
Yeah, that's interesting because we have grad programs in adult ed. So this might be helpful just to look at what's happening at the undergrad level.
Distance and non-distance programs. If you were only interested in a distance program, we could filter out the non-distance things.
Okay.
We can look at a large or a small area. This one is large. I was just working on a project for somebody else, and he wanted a large geographic area, but maybe we can narrow it down to just North, South Carolina, Virginia.
Yeah, let's do that.
As our more local state region. And then you're going to want to add the programs that fit this need. And so here are some examples, right? So English, liberal arts, business and commerce, religion, communication, these could all affect your choices. And so you're going to want to pick the ones that are most helpful to you. Which one would you like to look at?
So what is a consideration when I'm choosing that? If you're making that distinction, what would be a consideration that you would want us to take into account there?
So normally what I want from you when we're doing a report like this is I want a program, right? So I'll want a zip code and any related zip codes that go with it. And
Gotcha.
So at this point, let's just pick one.
Yeah, sure, that's fine. Yeah.
Because normally when we do it the other way around, that there aren't so many choices here.
I tell you what, let's go to the public relations applied communication. Let's do that one.
All right, so here's where we start getting into some data. We've made some choices and now we're going to get some data. So this is our competitive landscape. We're looking at 227 students who completed in a program in that area in 2019. That was our last year. All right, so there are 227 in every program that completed. There were 17 that completed through DE means and 210 that completed through non-distance offerings. And so there's That's a little bit large of a discrepancy, right? So that shows you that there's probably room in the market for DE in that area.
Yep.
Right. It will give you the top institutions for completions. So Elon University is sort of leading the pack in that particular program, although it's shrinking by almost 4%. And it gives you their tuition, their yearly tuition as well, so you can see how the tuition shakes out. Right. If there was a particular institution that you wanted to see in this list, you can add them here. So if we wanted to see ourselves, how we stacked up, we can add it there. Okay, so we don't have anybody.
No. And Cindy, could we add somebody that's outside of the original region that we selected, or does it have to be within that region?
I believe it will help. It will let you.
Okay.
I believe it will. All right. And then we're going to get a nice little graph showing us trends over time. The DE, we only started tracking DE in 2012, and so that one starts about halfway through the graph here. Right. And so it'll show you those. Then we'll get to occupations, right? We want to look at labor market demand. So there are occupations it recommends to you based on the choices you made, but then there are also other occupations that might relate to it that you could look through and decide whether you want to add or not to it. And then you can filter by degree program. So when you're looking at the job postings, if you're only interested in postings that have at least a certain amount of education, like if we're looking at a bachelor's program, and so we wouldn't care so much about an associate's degree, but we would maybe care about those that need a bachelor's degree. And if you wanted, you can select the ones above it as well. And once you make those choices, it will give you some data on the market demands, right? So in 2020, there were 146,000, almost 600 job postings in our 3-state area that we defined as our region. And compared to the national average, it's about 2% higher than what you would see nationally.
Gotcha.
Over the last 5 years, job postings have grown by 5%. So that's a growing industry over the last 5 years. It'll give you some median earnings by hour and year, and then the national comparison. And then it'll tell you how many annual openings there were in that job.
So I'm seeing as you're going through this, Cindy, is there's not only capabilities for us in terms of the way that we plan our programs, but also in the way that we market and recruit for our programs, right? The marketing materials that we use, it's really helpful in that too. Not just thinking about what that market might be, but even in saying and creating a demand for the degrees that we're offering, right?
Right. It'll give you a graph of how it's changed over time. You're going to get some demographic breakdown to the labor market as well. So it's primarily a female-dominated industry at about 77% there, as opposed to males. You're going to get occupation by age. This to me is interesting because if you have a large proportion of the workforce 55 or older, that means they'll be aging out soon, and there'll be a lot more job openings coming down the pike in 5 to 10 years. You also get breakdown by race and ethnicity, and so if you're looking about equity, that may be helpful in recruitment of students. Then you get some posting data down here. They filter into unique postings because everybody posts on several job boards at the same time, and so they filter it down to show you that out of all the postings, uniquely, no repeats, were 37,400-ish. So they post in about 7 different places when they post a job, and the median posting duration is about 38 days.
Okay.
So it gives you some sense of how companies are recruiting. It's going to show you density for recruitment by the states you selected. So Virginia and North Carolina have a larger density than South Carolina for recruiting in that job area. It's also going to give you companies, top recruiters, right? So you see who are hiring your graduates. It's also going to show you where they are. So Charlotte, right? That's not a surprise. Charlotte's a big city.
Yeah, that's right.
Richmond, Raleigh, Columbia, South Carolina. So these are all large cities So this is predominantly where people are working in the industry. Top occupation. So the SAC code is the SAC code is the job equivalent of a zip code.
Okay.
So that's what it's showing you there. The title of people. And then we're looking at alumni. We have approximately 4,500 alumni working in that occupation in our region, and what percentage that is, and our rank as a talent provider.
Wow, and how that compares with the other institutions.
Right. You'll see the other schools, their profiles, the percentages. This is the skills one, right? So here you're seeing the frequency of skills asked for in job postings on the left, and then the frequency of those skills in workforce profiles on the right. And so that's helpful, right? If you see things on the left that you aren't seeing at skills that people hold on the right, then that's someplace who you can add to your curriculum, right? You can add courses, or you can even add a whole certificate that could maybe work in tandem with an existing program. So those are what we call the hard skills, right? Those are usually very specific to the particular job. Here they are in another format for you to look at. And then what they're calling common skills, right? Communication, management, teaching, leadership, planning. All right, communication skills jump out at me right here at the top, right? So 35% of the postings are asking for it, and only 5% of the workforce profiles actually have that competency.
Yeah, so we can stand alone if we can market that piece to recruiters, et cetera, right?
Right. So you market to your students
that
you have what they need to get the leg up on the jobs in the industry, and then you market to the companies that your students have those skills, and then they come recruit from you, which brings you more students, and so it's a nice cycle that works.
Yeah, that's great.
All right, and here it is in another format for you. Here are qualifications from the postings, and then I can PDF this into a nice little package and send it to you to look at later as well. So that's sort of how that works. And that one works because you have a specific area you're interested in. There are other ways to just do more broad searches. You can do an occupation or a job posting or an industry search. So we can do a table where we can look at North Carolina, South Carolina, and Virginia, and we can, I think I have some stuff selected already. We have a start year and an end year, change in jobs over time, change in job percentage, earnings, openings versus annual openings. It's a good place to start, just to sort of get a sense of what's going on, and we can run a report. Right, and so we can see the job. We have a 5-year span from 14 to 19. It'll give you the change in number of jobs. Then they'll give you the percent of that change, what they're earning, and then the annual average openings. And we can sort these things, and we can filter these things. So if we're not interested in a job that has under 50 openings, we can filter those out. Then we can export it into a table, and we can sort highest to lowest, lowest to highest. We can pick and choose any way we want, and we can see what's happening in the industry. Let's see, do a percent change. Let's see if it'll let me. So we can do that. We can filter out a percent change that's less than 10%. Maybe we want to see anything that's less than 10%. Right? And it'll pop it out.
Wow.
Right? And so now you're only looking at things that are over 10%. Anything red means it's declining. Anything in green means it's growing pretty well. And so you can see here. And sometimes you have to read it carefully, which is why we don't just go with just one
Sure.
piece of data, because sometimes the really small numbers will give you a high percent growth.
That's right.
But that's because the numbers are so small. And so when you're looking at the percentage growth, then you have to go back and proof it to the actual numbers and say, okay, well, those numbers aren't so large. And so you can filter out really low numbers too. You can
Sure.
filter out anything under 50, and that'll take that away. 162 to 110, it's 32%, seems like a big change, but that number is really small. And so that doesn't tell us a whole lot. I'm trying to find a large one for you. Let's see, find a large one. There may not be one. So I don't see anything here with more than 10% growth.
Yeah, I think we might have filtered it out of there. So Cindy, just think about the usefulness of this. We've already talked about the usefulness in identifying perhaps emerging programs that we could look at for revisions to existing programs, utilizing these data for marketing campaigns, et cetera, communicating our skill sets to industry and to those that might be recruiting our students. Can you think of any other uses that we might have for this as we're trying to think of innovations within the college?
So you can look at lots of, you can parse the data in so many different ways. You can target particular employers. You can look at employers that are recruiting in the area, right? Remember, we can do by job posting, we can do by industry, we can do by occupations, we can even do by region. So you can look at a different region and see how they compare to each other. So you can target marketing and recruitment to students. You can look at DE as a growth opportunity to add on a modality to an existing program. You can look at skills as a way to revise programs or add something that makes a program more attractive. You can look at new programming development as well. And so there are lots of ways to look at the data. And then recruiting for people to come hire your students for things like internships. All those kinds of things are a way to sort of use this data appropriately.
Yeah, I think it's really neat because it'll allow us the opportunity to think outside the box because, education, like in other areas too, we tend to think of ourselves within this box and our students work within this realm. But it seems to me like this would allow us to think outside of that and begin to visualize how we might use the skill sets that we can develop in a College of Ed to support students who may want to go into other areas outside of education, typical historical K-12 education, et cetera, right?
Right. So if you have a program in mind, right, you take that zip code from the program, it's going to show you relevant programs that might be closely aligned to it, right? It's also going to show you jobs that are hiring people with those credentials. And so sometimes you can get surprised by who's hiring. I'm going to give you a perfect example. I'm an anthropologist. All my degrees are in anthropology, right? When I left ECU with my bachelor's in anthropology, I got heavily recruited by banks. How would you know, right? How would anybody know that banks like anthropologists, right? I didn't even, it was not one of those things you think about when you say an anthropology degree, you can go work in a bank. People don't say that.
That's right.
But banks liked the skills that you came out with in that particular degree, and they were willing to teach you those hard skills about banking because they liked those competencies you had in the more common skills.
Yeah, that's a great example. Thank you, Cindy. Just a quick question. So, as we get into this work, there may be requests to do some of these market scans. What sort of process would you like for us to follow to request maybe a meeting with you or to set up a scan like this how would you like for us to do that?
So it really needs to be a communication between me and the person who wants the data. So I'll be happy to report that there's no ticketing system for that. I know. There's not like a fill out a ticket. So send me an email and tell me that you have a research question of some kind related to program planning, and then we're going to set a meeting to talk through what it is you want to know and explore the data together. Right.
Yep.
So So some of the things that you might want to know ahead of time, depending on what your research question is either are some program zip codes, if you have an idea of the types of programs you're interested in exploring. If not, understanding what job areas you might be interested in and or regions you might be interested in. So when you're exploring, try to figure out what programs you want to know or up and coming, region is important to define where you're looking, right? You want to know whether it's a national search, a regional search, a local search. And we can do variations of those things if you want more than one. Then you want to know sort of what area of jobs you want to look at. How do you want to parse those out? If you have a particular program, then it's much easier just to define a region and explore the jobs openly from that, because you have to have some parameters, otherwise the data won't be useful to you.
Excellent. So that really helps. So we can do some pre-thinking before we have that meeting with you, and then make the most of that time and be able to dial in, kind of like I wasn't able to do today because I didn't have a particular one.
Right.
We were sort of
it
guessing.
Makes it more meaningful when you have a sense of what you want to do. Although that sometimes changes as we start clicking the buttons, and that's okay.
Sure.
And so we would do something similar to what I just did here with you right now. I'd ask you questions, and we would make those choices together, and we would see what they look like, and we build a report. And sometimes once we build that report, we decide we want to change a parameter and go back and rerun it, and we can do that too.
Well, excellent. And I think anybody that takes a look at this will have an opportunity to see some of that interaction, those questions you ask, and can maybe get their minds prepared to answer some of those. Because I think that becomes part of the hardest part on the person making the request is, what am I actually looking for? And then you can help us with that if we have those answers, right?
Right.
Yep. Well, Cindy, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you taking a few minutes out to walk through this with us, and we'll see you soon. Okay.
All right. Thanks, Alan.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.